Indianapolis Colts training camp is well underway, and contrary to what some film analysts have to say on social media, Anthony Richardson is off to a hot start. So, what's the latest from Colts camp in Westfield? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, joined here by my fellow analyst and co-host here at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. Drake, the Colts are 3 practices in now, all of them without pads. There is a mandatory ramp-up period before a team can actually practice in pads. That comes tomorrow. Tuesday will be their first practice in pads, but the Colts have still got a lot of work in over these 3 days, and especially Anthony Richardson. There have been quite a few standouts already early in Colts camp.
Yeah, and one of the things that you really wanted to see was just that. You wanted to see Richardson kind of continue his progression from last season in week 5 when we were all impressed. And then you wanted to see others like A.D. Mitchell. You wanted to see Josh Downs continue where he left off from last year, which was a very impressive rookie season with tumultuous quarterback play. So we'll get into others, but the key here is that outside of a few pieces of news we'll have to get to, it's looking great. I mean, the players you want to do well in camp, they're doing well in camp so far, although it just started. So keep expectations low, but so far from what we've seen, it's looked pretty good, man.
Yeah, it really has. So tonight we're going to talk about everything that's happened throughout the first 3 practices of Colts camp. We'll obviously talk about number 5, Anthony Richardson. We're going to talk about Josh Downs because Drake, he's honestly been the most impressive wide receiver of the entire group so far. Obviously, the position battles up and down the roster. There are some that are taking interest. Interestingly enough, they're taking shape already in camp. Obviously, then we'll talk about the defensive side of the ball. We have some injury news to get to, a lot to talk about tonight here on the Horseshoe Huddle podcast. Our first comment, Stats Matt, the third host of the show, and he's not going to be doing much hosting tonight. Making salsa, so hands might be a tad occupied to comment much. Brother, at least you're here. That's because, hey, with softball going on, he hasn't even been here that much. So we'll take it when we can get it. So appreciate your Stats, Matt. Lindsey Mack, all the way across the pond. Yes, we were running late. Apologize. We were having some audio issues, but hey, we're here. Hopefully you're still awake, Lindsey, because we got a fun episode tonight. Sean Contwright is in the chat as always. My dude, good to see you. We've got a fellow Colts podcast, Bring the Juice, is here. What's up, boys? Love to see Richardson getting comfortable. Good to see you guys as well. And as more people end up coming in the chat, make sure to go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on_SI on X, and then make sure to go and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know when Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, or for some special breaking news episodes so you never miss us. And if you can't catch us live or on YouTube, no worries. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. I see DSG Goodbar returns in the chat. Great to see you, man. Rich Wheeler. We've got Scott Hacker from all the way down from Florida. We got a good group of guys tonight to talk about Colts camp. So Drake, let's dive right into it, man. And let's give the latest from Westfield there at Grand Park Sports Complex. And we're going to start out with Anthony Richardson, the guy that really everyone wants to know about. And Drake, I was down there on Saturday watching him, and from what I saw on Saturday and what's happened on the first practice on Thursday and then on Sunday, Anthony Richardson looks like he hasn't missed a beat. You cannot tell that Anthony Richardson hasn't played a game of football since last October. There really isn't any rust. He's been very quick with his decision making, which is something we talked about last week that we really wanted to see. We didn't want to see him to take a step back in his processing and his decision making. He knows where to go with the football, and he's making very decisive decisions. So far through 3 practices, Anthony Richardson in the 11-on-11 period is 18 for 23, only 5 incompletions, 3 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown as well to go along with those 3 passing, only 1 interception, and that came yesterday on a brilliant play by Julian Blackmon. I mean, Anthony Richardson had Josh Downs over the middle, and he was floating it in there, and a diving interception by Julian Blackmon was really a great play by the 5th-year safety for the Colts. But like I said, Drake, quick, decisive decisions with the football, and it's really good to see that there doesn't seem like there is any acclimation period. The shoulder is fine as well, but on the football side of things, Anthony Richardson is locked in. He looks like he's in full control of this offense, and it's allowed this Colts offense to honestly get off to a quicker start than in past years, in my opinion, in training camp.
Yeah, and while he didn't get those on-field reps last season that a rookie so desperately needs at any position, but none more than quarterback, he's incredibly intelligent. All right, he's really good at adapting. Shane Steichen is a beautiful quarterback handler. The guy is able to coach and adapt his playing or his scheme to fit the strengths of the quarterback. So it's really a good situation for Richardson. And he sat there and he learned from Gardner Minshew too. Okay, so he stayed up to speed on all this stuff and was studying his ass off. He wasn't just sitting around and doing nothing in the midst of being hurt and going through surgery. So I think that I'm not really that surprised to see him efficient. I also think that you're at the start of training camp right now. And, again, it's not as intense as it's going to be, so you have to kind of look at these numbers and be like, this is what you expect to see is accurate passing, more than you'd ever see in a normal game, more than likely from pretty much anybody. But far less interceptions than touchdowns. You want far more touchdowns than interceptions, and he's got a 3-to-1 ratio going there. So the quick, decisive decision making, that's excellent because of Steichen's scheme. The RPOs, you have to be really quick and decisive with the ball. And then you mentioned that everything that's kind of carried over, you really haven't seen any rust. So you just hope it continues, man. Right now it looks great. The trajectory looks upward as it should. So he's still young, he's still learning, but man, he looks pretty good, man.
Yeah, and the thing is too, these completions by Anthony Richardson, they're not dink and dunk passes. The Colts really have been trying to stretch things out with this offense. There's been a lot of deeper throws. It's not just check downs to the running back or check downs to the tight end like Mo Alley Cox in the flat. I mean, he's hit Josh Downs, I think a total of 6 times. 6 out of those 18s have gone to Josh Downs, and most of them have been 10 plus yards down the field. I mean, when I was there on Saturday, he hit Josh Downs for what would have been probably a 35-yard gain down the right sideline. He hit Michael Pittman Jr. for what would have been around a 40-yard gain. So these throws and these plays that the Colts are working on, they worked on red zone primarily on Thursday. Saturday was really first and second down, so you can try to take more shots. Thursday or Sunday was more of a first, second, and third down day. So really just kind of working the ball up and down the field. It's good to see. They have been working on some more RPO specific stuff where and more of the running game where you see a lot of Jonathan Taylor involved in that. And I think that's needed too. You want Jonathan Taylor to get off to a hot start, considering that in all likelihood, Jonathan Taylor probably is not playing in any of these preseason games, so that's definitely needed, but it's good to see that Shane Steichen is allowing Anthony Richardson to go out there. Anthony Richardson looks comfortable. He does, and again, on those deeper throws, he doesn't look indecisive or he doesn't look timid. He has confidence in his shoulder. He has confidence in his ability, and he has confidence in his wide receivers to go up, get the football, and bring it down, especially in Josh Downs and Michael Pittman Jr., who are by far and away Richardson's favorite targets throughout these first 3 practices. So, but Drake, something that Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson talked about on Thursday, and I want to talk about it here tonight, is the quarterback run game. And we haven't had a chance to really talk about it yet, but both Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson made it completely clear, and I wrote about this on horseshoehuddle.com, that the quarterback run game is here to stay. They are not going to be limiting Anthony Richardson and the ability to make plays with his legs. Shane Steichen said, would you limit Steph Curry on shooting threes? So he's comparing Anthony Richardson's ability to run as a quarterback to Steph Curry's ability to shoot the three ball. Maybe a little bit of a stretch there, but I think you can kind of get the premise. And Anthony Richardson also said, my legs are one of my superpowers. If we take that away, it's not going to be good for this offense. And honestly, I completely agree. And I think there's a trust there too, Drake, between Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. We know Shane Steichen isn't going to call 15 to 20 quarterback runs in a game. We also know that Shane Steichen needs to trust Anthony Richardson to protect himself when those plays do come about, and make sure to maybe not fight for the extra yardage all the time or take the unnecessary hits, either get down or get out of bounds. But they made it clear that the quarterback run game is here to stay. Jim Irsay, when he talked this week, said that that's here to stay. And again, it's all about just kind of being smart with it, knowing when to call those quarterback design runs. For Anthony, knowing when to take off, when to get down, that's going to be a part of the maturation process, and we're kind of seeing that happening in real time.
Yeah, and I actually wrote a piece recently on when Dan Orlovsky was interviewed by Darius Butler, former Colts defensive back on the Pat McAfee show. They were just, in short, talking about Lamar or Anthony Richardson and who's the quarterback that's potentially going to be the guy to make a footprint in a loaded AFC conference. And Dan Orlovsky, without question or hesitation, said Indy. He's like, Anthony Richardson. And he goes, people say he shouldn't be running as much and he needs to, limit that and pull that back. He goes, why? He's like, I don't want him to be a pocket passer. He's like, I want him to be Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. I want him to be a guy that's mobility is going to be a factor. And that's what it is. And that's the reality, people. Like, you can't dial him back from using his legs. Okay. You can help him learn how to get down and have better body awareness because he's so damn big. He's going to take contact. So it's more about his awareness and just having those experiences where sometimes maybe if it's second down and, you got a couple yards to go and you're about to take a hit, just slide, you're going to have a third and short and that's okay. So I think that it's just more about learning that because the mobility, you have to use it. It's going to open up the entire offense and everyone else is going to have way more opportunities with that.
Exactly. Scott Hacker asks, I hear they are putting on the pads tomorrow. Is there any truth to that? Yes. Tomorrow's practice will be the first practice with pads on. So it'll be interesting to see how Anthony Richardson performs when the pads are on. The defense usually gets the upper hand when the pads go on. It's a lot more physical. So that'll be a really fun practice to watch tomorrow as we kind of see how this Colts team, both offense and defense, reacts to the first practice of the season being in pads. So Drake, let's talk about Anthony Richardson's favorite target so far throughout training camp, and that's Josh Downs. Josh Downs has been very, very impressive. And all this talk from Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen saying how Josh Downs was going under the radar, but they expect really big things about him this year. It's being backed up. Like I said, 6 out of the 18 completions from Anthony Richardson in 11 on 11s is to Josh Downs. And the really, I think maybe the most impressive thing about all of this is most of the time Josh Downs is in the slot. So because he's in the slot, who's he going up against on a regular basis? Kenny Moore II. Going up against Kenny Moore II, day in and day out, the best slot cornerback in the NFL, arguably. Kenny even tweeted or posted this on X. He said, iron sharpens iron. He's like, one is going to be great. And one by referencing Josh Downs. Sometimes Josh Downs gets the better of Kenny. Sometimes Kenny gets the better of Josh. So when you're watching these two battle in training camp, that was a really fun battle that I've been able to see throughout camp and throughout these practices is just seeing, Josh Downs and Kenny Moore going up against one another. And it's very, very competitive. These guys want to beat each other, but in a friendly manner. They're going out there competing, and then when one gets the better of the other, they shake hands and they go about it again. So there's not real animosity, which is what you want to see out of these twos. But Drake, if this continues, there's not going to be a single doubt that Josh Downs has a huge season. And if he continues to receive this amount of target share this season, from Anthony Richardson, wouldn't surprise me if Josh Downs went over 1,000 yards. And I wasn't expecting him to go over 900 earlier. 1,000 yards is very, very reachable for Josh Downs this season. Yeah,
and I think that an entire season in this offense and, working with with the quarterbacks and working with Richardson, especially. I mean, he's developed an incredible rapport with Anthony Richardson. So the fact that Richardson's favorite target right now is Josh Downs is great because, like you said, he's right there in the slot. That's the safety blanket, man. That's the screen guy. That's a guy that can really get open quick, and he's a precision route runner. But like you mentioned, he's also got incredible athleticism. He's really fast. Like if he gets an opening, he will outrun people. And you saw it in the Browns game. He roasted the secondary of Cleveland. So I think that you've got yourself a real player here, everyone. I mean, he broke the single season rookie record for the Indianapolis Colts franchise. Okay. I mean, you're talking about a guy who did that with still two different quarterbacks of totally different abilities. So I think that's so encouraging because now with AD Mitchell on the roster and, hopefully Alec Pierce taking that next step and potentially Anthony Gold being that gadget guy, man, the possibilities are endless. And like you said, don't be surprised, people, if Josh Downs gets over 1,000 yards receiving because he's going to get a lot of volume this season.
Yeah, he is. And I think with that volume, obviously, if he can continue to work himself open and build upon what he's already started here in training camp, it's obvious Anthony Richardson is looking his way. All he needs to do is get open, and we all know the type of hands that Josh Downs possesses. He hardly drops anything. So really good to see Josh Downs getting off to a hot start. And then another wide receiver. We'll talk about the position battle with wide receivers. AD Mitchell, second round pick. Drake, I don't know if I'm fully confident in saying this yet, but we might have a Josh Downs, Isaiah McKenzie situation brewing because AD Mitchell, for the most part, is getting the first run with the first team offense. It's a lot more than I thought was going to happen. I was going to expect there to be a considerable difference in the number of snaps, at least to start here, between Alec Pierce and AD Mitchell with the ones. I'd say it's easily 50-50, between Alec Pierce and AD Mitchell out there getting those reps with the ones. And you can kind of tell that a lot of times that when it's a run play, that's when you primarily see Alec Pierce. When it's more of the passing sets, it's a lot of times Adonai Mitchell. So I don't know if it's going to be as drastic as Josh Downs and Isaiah McKenzie, because I still don't anticipate Alec Pierce, his role completely going away.
Yeah.
But Drake, it seems like Adonai Mitchell more and more is carving out that role in the offense, and it's going to be a big one. So if this keeps up, I'm leaning towards AD Mitchell potentially starting not mid-season or towards the end of the season like we originally thought, but to the beginning of the season, we could see Adonai Mitchell out there as the starter at X wide receiver.
Yeah, and to the viewers who don't know what we're talking about, like in a super duper nutshell, what Andrew was referring to is about this time last season, we were like, well, Josh Downs, phenomenal route runner, complete receiver, kind of not a normal pick that you would see Ballard, go after. He's going to sit behind Isaiah McKenzie. All right. He's going to sit behind the veteran who just had a career season in Buffalo. That's just what it's going to be. And maybe mid-season, you'll see Josh Downs take that over. Me and Andrew could not have been more wrong on all fronts. I mean, he literally, by the time preseason was starting, by the time we were at camp, he was with the ones, and we weren't even talking about number 6. I mean, he was a return guy and wasn't even that by the end of the season for the most part. So this situation might not be that, but we did say that it could be, because, I mean, AD Mitchell's, his ceiling is insane as a receiver. Okay. As a blocker, I don't think that's ever going to be his game. Okay, I think he'll get better at it, but I don't think he's going to be on Alec Pierce's level, and you need that. But man, it's going to be interesting. I know Alec Pierce recently, even our own Jake Arthur, deputy editor, mentioned to him or asked him, what does it mean to have Anthony Richardson back and everything, and then it kind of spilled into having AD Mitchell on the team, and he welcomes the competition. Of course you're going to, and you're just hoping that you get the best out of both those guys, because if you can interchange those two at that wide receiver 3 role, man, that could be really interesting.
I think so. And here's the thing. AD Mitchell has been steadily starting to make more and more plays. Yes. Mitchell, in Sunday's practice, they finally did some one-on-ones between the receivers and the defensive backs, went up and snagged a pass over Dallas Flowers. When he hit the ground, his helmet popped up, but Mitchell stood up and was got the crowd pretty fired up. So and while he hasn't made a ton of plays in 11 on 11s, he's starting to make more and more. I think what's really going to be a big indicator is tomorrow's practice when the pads come on, because again, when the pads come on, the defense just plays obviously more physical, and the practice changes. So how does Mitchell fare when the pads go on against a more physical secondary? Because Alec Pierce has been there, done that, and I think has the upper hand with that experience. Now, can Mitchell ascend when the pads go on? I think that's going to be the real question, and if he can, then I think we're well on our way to seeing Mitchell take over that starting X role. And I think this is another big indicator too, that when you ask teammates and when you ask coaches about the offense and the playmakers, almost every single one of them mentions Adonai Mitchell right off the bat. And then you might say either they don't mention Alec Pierce at all, or they say, oh, and we have Alec Pierce too. So it's Alec Pierce seems like he's at times can be an afterthought. I think that just kind of speaks to what this team internally, they know the potential that Mitchell has, and they know what kind of athlete, what kind of receiver he can be, and how explosive he can be for this offense. And again, I just think that kind of gives him the upper hand in this battle. Obviously, he still has to prove it throughout the rest of training camp, but as of right now, those snaps are about 50-50, and we're definitely going to monitor it through the rest of training camp. Now let's go to the defensive side of the ball, Drake, and the guy that we had heard so much about having such a great offseason with his workouts coming in. His body is a little bit different. He's put on more muscle. He's more explosive. And that's Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye, the Colts picked up his fifth-year option after there was, some doubt whether that would get picked up this spring. The Colts did pick it up. Kwity Paye has come into camp ready to go. On Saturday alone, I saw him really dominate Blake Freeland over on that right side. And it's not like we're seeing the Blake Freeland of last season. Blake Freeland has definitely bulked up, gained some strength, and it's noticeable as well. His play strength has definitely gone up. But Kwity Paye was not only bull rushing him, I mean, he was beating him around the corner, beating him off the snap. Kwity Paye looked very, very good, and it ended up leading to 2 sacks on Saturday for Kwity Paye. One of those was getting around Freeland and sacking, or would-be sack, of Anthony Richardson right there in the pocket. And the other was Kwity Paye chased Anthony Richardson down on a rollout pretty quickly. So I know, again, it is day 3 of training camp. The pads aren't on. You're not going up against an actual opponent. But Kwity Paye is doing everything that he needs to do to continually stack days and showing that the explosiveness is there. And it's not just a flash here and there. It's all the time that Kwity Paye is showing it so far in training camp.
Yeah, and hey, that is absolutely excellent that you're seeing that, because not only is it because you're giving him the 5th-year option and you're trusting him to continue that climb, but I mean, I know that he's not really the most the favorite among Colts fans. You kind of got a mixed bag. You know what I mean? You got either he's going to continue to climb, or he just isn't a starting defensive end. He's not that generational guy. Here's the thing, though. Started out with 4 sacks, then 6 sacks, then 8.5 sacks, 32 tackles, then 45 tackles, then 52 tackles. He's just continued to get better. He's continued to climb, and he's continued to improve and nuance his skills and kind of make them a little bit more technical, because he's an incredibly strong guy. Him and Dio are incredibly strong defensive ends, but Kwity Paye is the better run defender too. So the fact that he's getting after the quarterback already, that is encouraging, because you want to see 10+ sacks out of this guy. That would be great. If he could go out there this season and get 10+ sacks, that'd be freaking awesome, because you're talking about 4 straight years of nothing but improvement. And he played almost the whole season last year. So the injuries appear to be behind him. We'll have to see. But, man, that's very encouraging, because Kwity Paye, ladies and gentlemen, he's still a hell of a player. And he looks right now like he could be that first-round talent the Colts drafted him.
He certainly has put in the work this offseason. He spoke to the media earlier, I think it was last week, when we heard from Kwity Paye, and he said when he was training this offseason, he was working out 4 to 5 times a day. And that's not just lifting weights 4 to 5 times a day. That's you get your strength training in, you get your field work in, you do different exercises. But I mean, he was on the grind all off season long to really get better at his craft. And not only did his personal coach notice it, other players that were working out with Kwity Paye noticed it as well. This guy is on he's really on to something here, and hopefully this can continue when we put the pads on and we start seeing it in games as well, that we're seeing more consistent pressure out of Kwity Paye, because so far in training camp it's been there. And now some more defensive talk for Indianapolis Colts training camp. And we got to talk about Julian Blackmon. Drake, for all the talk about the safety position, Julian Blackmon has played very well. I mean, the Colts are expecting a big season out of Julian Blackmon. I talked about the interception that he made on Richardson, a diving interception. He also had a pass breakup yesterday in practice as well. Julian Blackmon has been all over the field at that strong safety spot. And when we really look at this defense, there might be only a handful of players, maybe only 2 to 3 players, that are more important for the success of this defense than Julian Blackmon. And that's because of the lack of depth at that spot, the lack of other options at that spot currently, and for what Julian Blackmon means for this defense in terms of communication. And so far, he's heading into year 5, and I can't remember a training camp where I've seen Julian Blackmon enter the season playing this high level of football before.
Yeah, and he's still pretty young, and he's walking into, I believe, like year 4, if I'm not mistaken, or it might even be year 5. I'll have to look that up. But regardless, he's coming off of a season where he led the team in interceptions. He did that missing 2 games. And where we discussed this in our positional previews, where he really showed his value is when he was not on the field. Okay. It was the communication between Thomas, between Cross, between Harrison, it was not good. And you really noticed that not only are you missing a ball hawk, not only are you missing a guy who almost had 100 tackles, you're missing a guy who is an incredibly gifted field general. All right. He knows how to put the coverage in the right spot, and he'll make those calls. And that's why you saw that's the safety tandem operate a little bit more efficiently when he was out there. So I agree, man. And it's great to see him out there making plays already and really returning to form, because the biggest concern and the reason that he wasn't picked up by another team is because of those injuries. Again, this time it was a shoulder. Another time he barely played not long ago due to injury. So if he can just keep those away, Andrew, and play all 17 games, I really think he could have yet again another career season.
And that was what Julian Blackmon talked about as being one of his primary goals for this season, was playing all 17 games. It feels like he needs to be out there. And if he's not out there for all 17 games, that he's really hurting this team. And honestly, he probably is, if he's not able to play this entire season, just simply because the safety room for the Colts really isn't that great at the moment. So Julian Blackmon definitely needs to be out there for this team. Another interesting development on the defensive side of the ball, Jalen Carlisle is getting starting reps. So when the Colts are in their base 4-3 defense, Zaire Franklin obviously is entrenched at the mic, but Jalen Carlisle is getting snaps at that will linebacker position, and EJ Speed is moving over to the Sam linebacker. Now, when the Colts go into nickel and their sub packages where they only have 2 linebackers out there, which is the defense they're primarily in most of the time. All NFL defenses are primarily in nickel or above. It is still Zaire Franklin at the mic and EJ Speed at the will. But when they're in their base, EJ Speed slides over to that Sam linebacker, and Jalen Carlisle is sitting there at the will. So, and I think that has been the plan all along. They really want to see what he can do. That this allows Carlisle to get out there, get more snaps, be a better coverage linebacker, have them out there. And here's the thing, Drake, he's already making plays. We talked about the interception in mandatory minicamp that Jalen Carlisle had on Joe Flacco. He had another one on Saturday against Sam Ellinger, because I think it was Amir Speed got his hand on a football while guarding Ashton Doolin. The ball got tipped up in the air. Carlisle picked it up and would have taken it back for a pick six. So Jalen Carlisle is finding himself around the football. And because of that, the Colts are going to try to get him on the field as much as possible, starting here with potentially being a starter in the base 4-3 package.
Yeah, and we've talked about just in college how much just diversity his game displayed, because he'd play in the slot, he'd play in the box, he'd play corner. I mean, the dude was just everywhere. Obviously he's primarily that free safety, but the fact that they're able to put him in this position to succeed, uber athletic, and he's already making plays like that in camp. I mean, the tip drill is if you can be on the recipient end of that, okay, you have to have the awareness to still take that thing, the opposite direction and actually have the wherewithal to catch the ball. And so the fact that he's just got a nose for the football, I love that term because it fits Jalen Carlisle perfectly. I think that he's got a really interesting role if his ceiling can kind of start to get hit a little sooner than anyone's expecting, which we've talked about that with multiple guys on the roster right now. So it's encouraging because the Colts need coverage at linebacker. You and I are as high as anybody is on EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin, but neither one of those guys are probably as good right now at coverage as Carlisle is.
Yeah, and obviously there's going to be an adjustment from college to the NFL that Carlisle is going to have to go through in his coverage ability. But as far as natural coverage ability, Jalen Carlisle has so much experience playing defensive back in the SEC. That's going to transfer a lot easier over to the NFL than, say, EJ Speed before linebacker was actually a wide receiver at Tarleton State, played linebacker for about his final 5 games of college, and then comes to the NFL to play linebacker. Didn't even really play on the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be probably a much easier transition for Jalen Carlisle. So, but the final thing we want to talk about, final update before we dive into some position battles and talk about injuries tonight, is it's not training camp without a fight that includes Michael Pittman Jr. And that's how it's been the past couple of seasons. There already has been a skirmish at Colts camp between Michael Pittman Jr. and cornerback Jalen Jones. It was a one-on-one rep. Jalen Jones was flagged for holding on the play. Michael Pittman Jr. kind of took exception to Jalen Jones and how he played him on that. And then pretty quickly it turned into a skirmish where punches were thrown. Both guys had to be held back. Well, you saw Alec Pierce kind of picking up Michael Pittman and holding him back from getting after Jalen Jones. So it was a real fight at training camp. It didn't get out of hand. They were able to get them separated quickly and they moved on. But again, I think that kind of speaks to the competitive nature of Michael Pittman Jr. and just how different he is off the field as opposed to on the field when he turns into an absolute dog.
Yeah, and these aren't bad, if they don't happen often, right? I mean, every now and again, it's good. It's good to see your players are out there competing and they have that fire. And sometimes it's okay if it just leaks over a little bit, as long as it's not some kind of idiotic fight where we've seen jaws broken in locker rooms and stuff like that, or as long as, like I said, it doesn't happen frequently. But that's just Michael Pittman, guys. That's just how he is on the field. When he gets the ball in his hands, he doesn't juke. He doesn't really try to outrun people. He just tries to run through contact. So he is a very physical guy. Jalen Jones is a physical cornerback. So honestly, not really that surprised that happened between those two specifically.
Yeah, exactly. We'll take one more question here. This one's from Jeff Michael. How's Buckner looking? DeForest Buckner is DeForest Buckner. Okay, he looks like DeForest Buckner. How he did every single training camp.
Every year
Looks like a Pro Bowl level defensive tackle going up in there. Him and Grover Stewart both. So nothing to worry about there for DeForest Buckner. He looks good, and we'll get a better indication once the pads come on tomorrow, and the offensive and defensive linemen can actually start hitting each other a little bit more than they have been. So, but all in all, really good start to Colts training camp. Tomorrow will be a huge day when the pads come on, and we'll get to see kind of the physicality get ramped up over these next few days at Colts camp, and not only the physicality, the intensity is bound to ramp up as well. So don't be surprised if there might be another skirmish out there on the fields at Westfield. So,
Yeah.
Drake, let's talk about the position battles at camp, because I want to give some updates on how these are going over the past 3 days. We kind of talked about it earlier about the X wide receiver spot. Right now, it's a 50-50 snap difference between AD Mitchell and Alec Pierce. We'll have to see if that continues or if one of the guys can pull away, but this is a true competition between Pierce and Mitchell at this point.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one, right? Because you've got one guy who really has to prove that he's worth a second round pick, and that's Alec Pierce, and then he's fighting off a fellow second round pick that, no offense to Alec Pierce, is a way better prospect. Okay. And he fits a true wide receiver role way better, which you're going to need more than a blocker at wide receiver. So I still think that there's reason to hope for Pierce, but we'll have to see, because I think that while everyone's writing him off and Mitchell looks great, once those pads come on, man, and once the physicality comes into play, like Andrew said, I would give it to Pierce. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, tomorrow will be day one. And obviously we've seen when Pierce has been in, it's more of the running plays. Adonai Mitchell definitely getting accustomed to the offense and starting to make more plays as the practices go along. Going to the tight end battle, and Drake, really hasn't been too much of a battle. Primarily, it's been Kylan Granson and Drew Ogletree out there with the ones. So we do see Mo Alley Cox come in sometimes on the jumbo sets, but as far as Jelani Woods is concerned, not too many snaps with the ones. So the primary guys with the ones is Kylan Granson as the move tight end, and you have Drew Ogletree, his name escaped me for a second. Drew Ogletree as the primary inline Y tight end. So, and like I said, those guys, the Woods, Alley Cox, Will Mallory, even, they rotate in at times, but as of right now, it is still Granson and Ogletree. They're getting the lion's share of the first team reps.
Holy crap! This position is such a freaking mess for the Colts. You know, it's not in like a bad, like, oh my god, they've got no talent. It's a very weird, like mucky type of issue where they have so much there. One of those guys has got to go. There's no way they're going to keep 5 guys, right? I mean, they might, but like, it'd be crazy, I think, if they did. So I'm not going to lie, and I'm going to go ahead and say this, knowing that Jelani Woods still has the highest potential. Okay. It is a little bit concerning that he's not seen more, that he hasn't, because I know that he's got to get back up to speed and stuff after missing an entire season due to hamstring, but he also got hyped from these workout videos, and you saw him and he looked crisp, and, he looked like he was really up to speed, and it just doesn't seem that way yet. So I think that, if middle of the preseason and Woods is like struggling when he's on the field or just isn't out there, with more prominent reps, I think then you might start to say, what's going on here with Jelani? Is there some kind of issue? But right now, man, I'd give it to Kylan Granson. I really would. I think that he's the most trusted tight end for Anthony Richardson. I think he works the best as far as a pass catcher at tight end for Steichen's offense. Him and Mallory might be the better fits. So we'll have to see, man. Like I said, it's such a competitive group, and it's probably the most competitive on the whole roster, top to bottom.
Jelani Woods has had a kind of an up and down first 3 days of camp.
It's weird.
On Thursday, he had a few drops that were right to him, so not the best start. On Saturday, he did rebound, had a catch with the second team right down the seam from Sam Ellinger that was good for about a 20 to 25 yard gain. And then yesterday, he started to get those first team reps. So it's been a steady climb for Jelani Woods, and I'm sure the Colts coaches are going to give him every opportunity for that. But so far, he hasn't been head and shoulders above the rest of the tight end group where you can confidently say Jelani Woods is going to be the top tight end for this team. It's really been Kylan Granson and Drew Ogletree so far in camp. The running back 2 position really, again, hasn't been that big of a competition. It's been Trey Sermon primarily. We do see Evan Hall here and there, but really the lion's share of those running back 2 snaps has been Trey Sermon. And I think that's kind of what we thought was going to happen, Drake, where Evan Hall would be a more of a receiving option, and Trey Sermon kind of that guy that fits more of the runner style behind Jonathan Taylor. But honestly, it hasn't been where Evan Hall has cut into those snaps very much. It's been most of the second team snaps are going to Trey Sermon.
Yeah, and I think that, it's a little bit different for Hull than it is for Woods. You're going into year 3 after missing all of year 2 and not seeing much of the field in your rookie season. For Hull, he missed his entire rookie season. So I think that he's going to need to be acclimated a little bit back up to speed. I really do. But I give credit to Trey Sermon. I really do, because he's carved out a role. It seems it's the first time he's with the same team for a second straight year. Okay. Right now anyway. And Shane Steichen seems to trust him. And I think there's a reason he came over from Philly, so I think Steichen liked what he saw, honestly. Expect him to be that Zach Moss replacement, people. If he can hold on to the football, the guy averaged 4.6 yards a carry last season. Okay. I mean, it's there. The talent is there as a running back too, not a superstar. All right. Don't expect Trey Sermon to finally break out. I think is what I'm saying. But I think for a running back 2 role, he could really have a nice role, and we'll have to see. As long as he can just not fumble the football, man, I think he could carve that out and really secure it.
He certainly is on his way to doing that already here in Colts training camp. The swing tackle position, again, really hasn't been much of a battle. So far, it's been Blake Freeland. And with Braden Smith kind of coming along slowly from they're integrating him slowly. Don't want to rush things with Braden Smith and have a setback with that knee that he had surgery on this offseason. But Blake Freeland has been taking all of the right tackle 1 reps. Matt Gonzalez has been taking all of the right tackle 2 reps. And I'm sure that once Braden Smith gets integrated back into the lineup, it's going to end up going to Blake Freeland being that swing tackle, at least for now. That we really haven't seen Gonzalez with any first team reps. It's always been Blake Freeland as the starter at right tackle, and then Gonzalez as the number 2 at right tackle, with Jake Witt over there on the left side so far in training camp. But and that could change, obviously, as camp goes along. We'll kind of want to see how these guys perform in pads, but as of right now, Blake Freeland has a hold on that swing tackle position.
And that's fine. I mean, Matt Gonsalves, I think, has the higher upside. I think that you expected that, and you hope that after the experience that Blake Freeland got to, absorb last season with all those starts, that he's going to be a little bit more, along as far as being acclimated to the offense. So right now, I'd give that to Freeland. But as your rookie files piece indicates, man, there's a reason the Colts traded up to get Matt Gonsalves, and they really think he can do a lot for the team in the future. So we'll have to see. That could be a lot closer than what you and I think. So
I'm pretty high on what Matt Gonsalves can do with this team. And by the way, he's got an incredible family, Matt Gonsalves. So definitely high on what he can do for this team, maybe even as soon as this year. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, and this one hurts. We talked about that Leo position between Samson Ebukam and Laiatu Latu. That competition is no longer. Samson Ebukam, it was reported today that when he was carted off the field in Sunday's practice, it was because of a torn Achilles. So Samson Ebukam did tear his Achilles on Sunday in practice, the first major injury of Colts training camp, and Samson Ebukam is out for the season. So what a brutal break, not only for this Colts defensive line, but for Samson Ebukam, Drake. I mean, he comes into the Colts, has a career year, leads the team in sacks, and is looking to build off of that. And 3 practices into the 2023 season, his year is done. So it's just a brutal blow for Samson Ebukam and for this Colts defensive line.
Yeah, and Ebukam had spent most of his time as a rotational piece, and so he gets the playing time finally, and he shows that he's a starting level defensive end. And so for this to happen, it's going to be tough to replace, right? But Indianapolis has also done good by putting depth pieces where they need to be. So I think that they can recoup this, but man, he was also the best run defender per Pro Football Focus last season. So you're not just talking about a guy who was, a pressure hog and just absolutely sacking the quarterback, leading the team in that regard. He was also the best run defender.
I think some Colts fans take Samson Ebukam for granted. He's going to be sorely missed on this defensive line this season, even with some of the other guys that are looking to fill his role. Shout out to my beautiful wife, Danielle, for the nightly super sticker. Thank you so much for all of your support as Drake takes a drink. Really, really really appreciate it as always. And this is why Rich Wheeler, I wanted to save your question until we got to this point. That's why I didn't call on you earlier. I do apologize. But Rich Wheeler asked, with Sampson's unfortunate injury, do you guys see Latu, Dio, or Lewis as the primary starter alongside Pay? And honestly, Drake, this is going to sound like a cop-out because it is, but we don't know yet. We really don't know yet because, again, we're 3 practices in to training camp, and with Ebukam going down, this is wide open. I will say that when Ebukam did go down yesterday, Taekwon Lewis stepped in as the guy that was running with the ones in his spot. Now, Dio Odangbo did not practice yesterday. He is dealing with a minor calf injury, so he wasn't out there. We don't know if it would have been Dio to take Ebukam's spot, but Latu was rotating in there as well. Latu's been primarily working with the twos. However, he has had a chance to go up against the Colts, the Colts starting offensive line. And Latu got Bernard Ryman a time or two going up against Bernard Ryman. So, and that's not a knock on Bernard Ryman because Bernard Ryman, as we saw last year, played very well last year. And so far at training camp, I really didn't see Ebukam ever beat Bernard Ryman when I was there. Bernie has been holding it up and looks to be playing at the same level, if not better, than what he did last season. So to have Latu kind of give Bernard Ryman some trouble and really get around him a couple of times, I think that's saying something about the rookie. So, but again, I don't know who the primary starter is going to be. I think regardless, you're not going to see any one of these guys playing 75-80% of the snaps. I really don't think anybody on the Colts defensive line is going to do that because they want to consistently rotate guys. But as of right now, we only have that little bit of yesterday's practice to go off of. It was Taekwon Lewis who took that spot with Dio Odangbo out and Latu still kind of getting his feet wet in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think the only thing you can really expect is that Kwity Paye is going to get the most snaps out of pretty much any one of the defensive ends, at least right out of the gate. So it just absolutely sucks because you're talking about a Swiss Army knife of a defensive end that's not going to be easy to just plug in somebody in place.
Yeah, I agree. Stats Matt says, I say Lewis to start and Latu getting more snaps than originally thought. Dio comes in for Kwity, I think. Very well could be. And
Lewis is the most experienced. So
again, if Latu really starts to come on, again, he was that 15th overall pick. Get him out there and play him. You kind of know what you got in Taekwon Lewis. Get Latu out there to play as many snaps as possible. Christopher Jackson is asking, any chance we check out Carl Lawson or Tyus Bowser? I don't think so. Yeah. I think that the Colts like what they have with the group, even with Ebukam that goes down. I think this just kind of opens up an opportunity for a guy like Isaiah Land or Jannard Avery to make the roster, but I don't see any outside moves happening, especially if they haven't made an outside move at safety yet, which is still the position that they need to make, even with Ebukam going down. Drake, let's talk about cornerback. And right now, it seems like Jalen Jones is the starter. It's Juju Brents and Kenny Moore when they're in their base 4-3. When they need a third cornerback, it's Jalen Jones that comes out there. Dallas Flowers rotates in occasionally, but Jalen Jones is getting most of the snaps with that first team offense, kind of what we expected coming into training camp.
Yeah, and Flowers, I think, is going to be more of the passing downs guy. I don't get me wrong. I think Jones has more of a chance to start right now than Flowers, but Flowers' skill set is more attuned to coverage because he's not that great of a tackler. At least he wasn't last year. And there were times where he was a liability in run defense. So I think that unless he can kind of start elevating both of those metrics of his game, you're going to see him primarily with, out there on passing downs because he's got the speed to keep up with those guys.
Yeah, and it certainly didn't help Dallas Flowers getting mossed by A.D. Mitchell. Patrick is mentioning here.
That's fair.
Fantastic catch by Adonai Mitchell. And if you haven't seen it, go take a search on X. You'll find it. It's a very, very pretty catch from A.D. Mitchell from getting thrown the ball to from Anthony Richardson. Free safety. Drake, it's an open competition, I would say. I think Nick Cross has it by an edge, because when the first team defense does go out there, it's usually Nick Cross that goes out there. But it hasn't stopped the Colts from rotating Rodney Thomas second in there, Ronnie Harrison Jr., who has switched back to safety. And I really think the reason he has done that is because of how well Jalen Carlisle has already been playing early on. And they want Carlisle to get those snaps at linebacker, so that kind of eliminates the need for Ronnie Harrison Jr. at that dime linebacker position. So because the Colts don't have much there at safety, Harrison's back at safety right now. And usually it is Nick Cross that goes out there as that starter at free safety next to Julian Blackmon, but they have rotated both Ronnie Harrison in there for Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas II. So as of right now, I would probably say the order goes at free safety. It probably goes Nick Cross, Ronnie Harrison Jr., and Rodney Thomas II. That's typically how the snaps have been divvied up. So Nick Cross right now, but so far, Nick Cross really hasn't done anything to separate himself from that group either. So we're going to need to see not only better play out of Nick Cross, but I think some splash plays as well to really put his name on the map and really solidify that free safety spot, because Chris Ballard mentioned it last week, Drake, that this battle could take going into the regular season, even if it has to. And for Colts fans, that's not a good thing to hear when you're talking about this safety position.
Yeah, I don't like it. I'm just going to outright say it. Usually, you look at the situation that Ballard says, and you try to think like a GM. You know, how would you make the best possible decision where the finances don't, overshoot anything or overshoot the value, and it just doesn't make any sense, because they've still got an open competition, and now you're bringing in Ronnie Harrison, who, while he did show some promise last season, it was also in a linebacker role for the most part. That's why his coverage looks so good. Okay, like you put him in at safety, it's a different story. He's not that great. Okay, and then you've got Thomas, who is a liability up to this point. Until proving otherwise, he is a liability. It shows that they're not sold on Cross yet, and to say to let it go into the regular season, that's dangerous. That's dangerous, man, because you've still got some guys out there you can get. They don't have to be Simmons or Diggs. Would that be preferable? Of course, but they got to do something. I think a move is necessary. Okay, just to push Nick Cross without question, because then you're really pushing him. You're bringing in outside talent. I don't know. It just makes more sense to me than to just trust those three, because I look at those three as your free safeties. That's scary.
It could leave a huge hole in your defense. It really could. And Madden 25 comes out on August 16th. Drake, I think the first move I'm going to make in my franchise for the Colts is signing Justin Simmons to command that free safety position. And then I think Chris Ballard should follow that as well. Right. The final position battle that the Colts talked about was that backup Mike linebacker. It's Saguna Luby at this point. Saguna Luby has been the backup Mike really throughout camp. I think the closest competition actually hasn't been from Grant Stewart. I'm sorry. That probably breaks your heart, Patrick. Grant Stewart still has that role on this team. Don't you worry. But it's actually been from Cameron McGrone. Cameron McGrone has been the one that I think is pushing Saguna Luby the most. But as of right now, it's a Luby's to lose.
Yeah, and McGrone didn't really play last season a whole lot, so kind of a name that might sneak up on some Colts fans. But I think that's a role where really it's Saguna Luby's to lose, because I think that he's got the most experience. Really, I mean, he went out there and played an entire game, led the team in tackles last year. So, I mean, that'll be an interesting one though, because you can't count Stewart out, and I do think that McGrone is an interesting name just because he kind of popped out of nowhere and he's impressing a little in camp.
Yeah. Definitely. So those are the updates on the position battles. Like always, Drake and I will keep you up to date every single episode on where those position battles stand all the way through training camp. So Drake, let's talk about the Colts injury report before we let these good people get out of here. We already talked about Samson Ebukam and his torn Achilles. That's going to be a position to monitor now between Leatu Latu, Dio Odangbo, and Tyquan Lewis. Certainly, I think if I had to pick, I would, as long as he's not a complete liability against the run, which I don't think he would be, you want to get Leatu Latu out there to get him as many snaps as possible and really see how quickly the number 15 overall pick can develop and what he can bring to this defensive line.
Yeah, and I think that like you said, if you have an opportunity to get him out there and you're comfortable with it, you need to fire away, because, you're looking at a guy that right now is one of the favorites to win the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. And there's a reason for that. It's because he's a potential generational prospect. So yeah, if you can get him out there, absolutely do it. Let him loose, man.
Yeah, exactly. Want to give a shout out to NFL Nerd for the super chat. Really appreciate all of your support. And this was a position battle we didn't talk about, so let's cover it real quick. Yeah, take a swig, Drake. Take a nice long drink. You probably got a mule there. Would be
I do. Yeah,
absolutely. Mule on a nice hot day. But Jason Bean, Keaton Slovis, or Sam Ellinger for QB3. It's Sam Ellinger. Ellinger right now, QB3. Keaton Slovis has not even seen reps with the second team, with the third team. It's been pretty much, it's been Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco. When Joe Flacco missed Saturday's practice due to attending the funeral of former teammate Jacoby Jones, it was Sam Ellinger that led that second team defense the entire practice. So, right now it's not close. Sam Ellinger is still the quarterback 3 for the Colts. That could change in the preseason, but we all know Sam Ellinger, he's usually the GOAT in the preseason. It comes out just with absolute fantastic performances. Going to take a lot to move Ellinger off of that quarterback 3 spot. Back to the injuries, Drake. Chris Lamont's still on the PUP list with that ankle injury. And Raekwon Davis, we did find out why Raekwon Davis is on the active non-football illness list. It's because he came in and he has high blood pressure. So they're trying to get that blood pressure down. The Colts are monitoring it every single day, and once that's under control, Davis will be out there on the field. Shout out to the CFO, Patrick Wire, for the super chat. One word: football. I love it, Patrick. Great to see you, buddy. Great for all of your support. And he says it's always the summer of Sling and Sammy. Yeah, well, that's pretty much it. Sling and Sammy dominates the month of August before he kind of sneaks back into the shadows holding the clipboard from September through January. You love to see it. Hey, and I love Sam Ellinger.
And it makes you think QB1. Maybe there's a QB1 in there. And then actually,
there are still some people out there in the depths of Colts Facebook that are clamoring for Sam Ellinger to be put in as the starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. Yeah, there's still some people out there that think that. Offensive tackle Braden Smith. We talked about that he had knee surgery this offseason. The Colts were going to bring him along slowly. Really good news for Braden Smith. He did return to practice on Sunday. Didn't participate in any of the team sessions, just the individual drills, but he is back out there. So the Colts have said that they are going to kind of limit him at first and bring him along gradually. And that's the way to go about it. There's no reason that Braden Smith should be pushed back out there. We know what Braden Smith is when healthy. One of the best right tackles in the NFL, and a guy that you can really rely upon to go toe-to-toe with the best pass rushers. You don't want to push him too far when it's the end of July, when in these practices, especially for a guy like Braden Smith, don't typically matter. He's been there, done that. He will be fine. And then finally, we kind of mentioned this earlier as well, but Dayo Odeyingbo was limited on Saturday, missed Sunday's practice. He is dealing with a calf injury. He was at practice on Sunday, riding the stationary bike next to Raekwon Davis, but did not actually practice. So something to monitor, though, because with Ebicom out, those reps are up and ready there for the taking. So if you're Dayo Odeyingbo, you want to be out there trying to earn those reps, because it could lead into a starting role, the first of his career in a contract season. So that could be huge for Dayo Odeyingbo, not only for his production, but for him potentially cashing in after the season is over.
Yeah, and you're talking about you want to continue with that momentum because he's coming off of his own best season, with the Colts. So I think that it's imperative that Dayo gets out there sooner rather than later, because in this league, even if you're hurt, nobody waits for you, man.
Exactly. So that's all the injuries. Honestly, outside of Ebicom, the injuries are coming along really, really well, which is what you want to ask for. Now, no more devastating injuries like the Ebicom torn Achilles. The Colts cannot afford to have too many more of those. But the pads come on tomorrow, the first padded practice of training camp. And like I mentioned before, Drake, the intensity is going to be up. The physicality is obviously going to be up. And it's a new game when the pads go on for both the offense and the defense. And I'm going to be definitely watching how Anthony Richardson adapts to that, how he performs when the pads are on, if there is a dip in efficiency, or if he can keep it rolling. Because so far, Richardson's looked really, really good.
Yeah, and he's got the size to get through all that contact and make throws. And we've seen it last season, little glimpses of a real special passer of the football and a hell of an athlete. So you want to continue to see him grow, but really the guys to watch during these full pad practices are the rookies and the guys that haven't had a whole lot of exposure yet. So guys like A.D. Mitchell, Evan Hall, guys like that. Really intrigued to see some of these positional battles, man. It's a good time to be a Colts fan, even though today is kind of a somber note regarding Samson Ebukam.
Yeah, and not only that, when the pads go on, I want to give a shout out to Joel Erickson of the Indy Star. His favorite thing to watch, O-line, D-line. The O-line, D-line one-on-one battles tomorrow. They're going to be a lot of fun. So that's our show for tonight, guys. And right at the buzzer, appreciate Truett. You might be a little late, buddy, but hey, these sessions are all recorded on YouTube, so you can go out watch it. You can go watch it wherever you want to, either on YouTube at the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel, where you should be already subscribed, or on the podcast side of things, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed. Give us a 5-star review on that, and then like our other socials on Facebook, Horseshoe Huddle, and then on X, make sure you follow at Colts_SI. So all of that is taken care of. We appreciate every single one of you for joining us tonight. Shout out to our super chats, Danielle, my beautiful wife, as always, NFL Nerd, the CFO Patrick, and Truett. Appreciate all of you guys and everyone else that joined us this evening. So like I always say, Drake and I are here every Monday and Thursday night. We're going to continue to give you the latest from Colts camp all preseason long until we finally get to week 1, which I think is only 40 some days away at this point. So really, it's not that far away. So we appreciate everyone for sticking here with us. And before we leave, I know Drake's got plenty of pieces out there on horseshoehuddle.com that you guys need to go check out. Tell them where to go, Drake, and what are some topics that you've wrote about recently?
So a couple that I really liked were the 3 Colts who I think will have career best seasons. And then Alec Pierce mentions how the A.D. Mitchell battle, him and A.D. Mitchell battling, will elevate the offense. And then, of course, what should we expect from the Colts after Samson Ebukam's season-ending injury? So go check all that out along with the rest of us at Indianapolis Colts on SI. Sorry, it's new.
Yeah, the new name, Indianapolis Colts on SI, horseshoehuddle.com. But yeah, go give those a read. For myself, got a piece out there on Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson, really diving into that quarterback running game, and Anthony Richardson kind of discussing his superpowers. So that was a fun one to talk to those guys and write about. Also got a piece out on Josh Downs and how he is continuing to build trust with Anthony Richardson heading into year 2. And while Michael Pittman Jr. and Adonai Mitchell have been the wide receivers in the headlines for the contract extension and the draft, Josh Downs is flying under the radar, just how he likes it. So definitely go check those out, as well as, like Drake said, everything else on horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWellster You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Thursday night to get you all caught up on everything else that's happened over the past few days from Colts camp and tell you all about the practices when the pads come on. It's going to be a lot of fun over these next few days. So everyone, enjoy your night. If you're of legal age, have an adult beverage on me. Tomorrow's my 30th birthday. I'm going to be hanging out, just kind of hanging out with my son, because the wife has open house in her school. So it's me and the 2-month-old celebrating the 30th birthday tomorrow night. It's going to be a lot of fun. But cheers to everyone out there. And Drake and I will be right back here on Thursday night to talk more Colts football with all of you.